pulled up to my ranch just after sunrise and damn near forgot how to breathe. A brand new fence was cutting straight across my pasture like somebody had dragged a knife through my chest, and hanging off the gate was a shiny private property sign swinging in the breeze like it was laughing at me. Then I saw the padlock. And that was when I realized something funny. The only person in Cedar Hollow with the key to that gate was me. My name's Carter. I'm 38, and this ranch is not some cute little country fantasy. It's 10 years of sweat, debt, busted knuckles, and peace I had to fight for after too many years trapped in a city office. 40 acres roll around my cabin, broken up by old oaks, a shallow creek, and a weathered barn with a rusted tin roof that chatters when the wind comes through. I know this land better than I know most people. I know where the mud gets slick after rain, where the shadows hit first in late afternoon, where the cicadas get so loud in summer they sound like bad wiring inside the sky. Down by the creek, there's an old apple tree that drops blossoms every spring like it's trying to soften the edges of the world. Cedar Hollow is quiet in that eerie, beautiful way. Rural places can be gravel roads, leaning mailboxes, cattle in the distance, porch lights glowing soft at dusk. People wave, people nod, people mostly stay out of each other's business, which sounds peaceful until a bully figures out everybody's politeness can be used against them. That bully lived across the road from me. Martin Hale looked polished, polite, and wrong, in a way that was hard to explain until you dealt with him long enough. Tall, lean, gray hair, always in place, smile, always tidy eyes, never warm. He talked about community standards like he'd personally invented them. He'd mention HOA rules nobody else had ever heard of. One day he glanced over my fence and said, "You sure these lines are where you think they are, Carter? Some parcels out here can get tricky." I laughed it off, because Martin wasn't loud. He didn't scream, didn't threaten anybody where witnesses could hear him. He watched. He'd linger on his porch with binoculars at his side like that was a normal hobby. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at my barn, my gates, my pasture, and when I noticed he wouldn't look away, he'd just smirk like he was already halfway through a plan I hadn't seen yet. So when I rode out that morning and found bulldozer tracks ripped through my field, fresh dirt piled in trenches, and my cows stuck on the wrong side of a brand new cedar fence, I knew exactly whose fingerprints were on it. The smell of sawdust hung in the air. One of my irrigation lines had been crushed, hissing water into the dirt. And there was Martin leaning against the fence with a coffee cup like he was admiring landscaping. "Morning, Carter," he called. "Beautiful day for property lines." I was across the gravel before I even realized I'd moved. "What the hell is this?" He took a slow sip. "Lines can be confusing. Thought I'd help define things. This is my land." He tilted his head. "You may want to check your deed." That smugness hit harder than the trespass. I could see the whole strategy move fast. Make it look official. Act calm. Hope. I freeze. My barn doors were rattling. In the wind, water was flooding the trench his crew had dug, and all I could think was, this man had stepped onto the one honest thing in my life and tried to rewrite it with boards and nails. I went back to my cabin shaking. I threw every paper I owned across the kitchen table: deed survey maps, HOA letters, old closing documents. I traced the parcel line again and again. Martin's fence was entirely on my property. Every post, every plank, no gray area, no mistake. Still, paper and victory aren't the same thing. So I started making calls. County surveyor, municipal office, a local attorney I'd saved years earlier after a minor easement issue. By noon, I had confirmation from everybody who mattered. The boundary was mine, the fence was unauthorized, and yes, I could force removal. Problem was, legal action takes time, and men like Martin love time. Time gives them room to spin and make your truth sound emotional while their lie starts sounding official. I needed something immediate. The county clerk mentioned something odd from the original subdivision paperwork, so I called Evelyn Pierce, the widow of Cedar Hollow's developer. "Honey," she said, "did you ever open the old envelope marked gate key recipients?" I went digging through a metal filing cabinet until I found a dusty envelope I hadn't touched in 10 years. Inside was a small brass key and a note on developer letterhead. "Master Gate Access 1 issued per property owner." I actually laughed out loud. Martin had used one of Cedar Hollow's old utility gates to bring his crew and machinery in fast, then locked it like he owned the place. What he didn't know was the lock answered to the old master system, and the key for my parcel had been sitting in my filing cabinet the whole time. All afternoon I sat there with the survey, the attorney's notes, and that key in my hand, and my anger turned into something better, patience with teeth. Martin thought force made things true. He thought if he moved fast enough and smirked hard enough, reality would bend. But land doesn't care about swagger. Paper doesn't care about charm. And locks are brutally honest. The next morning I rolled up on my four-wheeler before he had time to start another performance. Dew still clung to the grass, the morning air smelled like cedar and mud, and Martin was already by the fence arms, crossed, sunglasses on, looking like he expected me to apologize for being robbed. "Morning, Carter," he said. "Come to admire the improvements." "No," I said, "I came to end this." He gave me that same thin smile. Again, lines can be... "Don't," I said, pulling out the survey. "County confirmed it. Attorney confirmed it. Every inch of this is mine." He barely blinked. "Documents can be interpreted." That's when I held up the brass key. He went quiet. I walked right past him to the access gate his crew had used, slid the key into the padlock and turned it. The click echoed in the morning stillness. The chain dropped. The gate swung open, and for the first time since I'd known him, Martin looked unsure. "You built a fence on my land," I said, "using access you never controlled in the first place. You can't just..." "Yes, I can," I cut in. "You remove every post, every plank, and every scrap your crew brought onto my property today. Or I call the sheriff, the county, the HOA board you love hiding behind, and my lawyer files the injunction by lunch." The wind hit the fresh cedar hard enough to rattle it. My cows lowed from the pasture. Martin looked at the open gate, then at the survey in my hand. His jaw tightened. His shoulders sagged a little. And underneath all that polished control, I finally saw the truth. He wasn't powerful. He was just used to people backing down. "Fine," he muttered. By afternoon, his crew was tearing the whole thing down. And I'm not going to lie, that sound was beautiful. Hammers knocking loose the boards, saws, whining boots, thudding in dirt. It all landed in my chest like a victory drum. A couple neighbors slowed their trucks on the road just to watch Martin eat his own arrogance board by board. That should have been enough. But the twist, the part that made this whole thing bigger than me, came an hour later. While I was walking the cleared line checking the damage, I spotted a rusted metal box half buried near the roots of the big oak by the creek, probably kicked loose when Martin's crew dug the trench. I pried it open expecting junk. Instead, I found years of paper, complaint copies, handwritten notes, sketches of parcel lines, neighbor names, dates, records of little pressure campaigns Martin had apparently been running all over Cedar Hollow, bogus HOA complaints, quiet intimidation attempts to nudge older residents off small strips of land they were too tired to fight for. He hadn't just come for me, he'd been practicing on everybody. I must have gone still because when I looked up, Martin was staring at the box like he'd seen a ghost. "What's that?" he asked, voice suddenly tight. I slid the papers into my backpack. "Insurance," I said. "For me, and for every neighbor you thought was too polite to push back." He opened his mouth, then shut it. That was the moment he knew he hadn't just lost the fence, he'd lost the story. The control, the reputation that let him move through this neighborhood like he owned a piece of everybody else's spine. By sunset, the pasture was open again. My cows drifted back where they belonged. The creek kept moving like none of this drama had happened. The wind moved through the oaks and the ranch finally sounded like mine again. Standing there with dirt on my boots and that brass key in my hand, I had one ugly realization. Some people don't want what's theirs. They want proof they can take what's yours. They confuse fear with respect, silence with surrender, and politeness with weakness. And the hard lesson is kindness by itself does not stop people like that. Boundaries do. Records do. Witnesses do. Preparation does. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like a lock clicking open. Sometimes it looks like a bully being forced to tear down his own little empire while the whole road watches. Martin walked back across the gravel, smaller than he'd looked that morning. Not shorter, just smaller. Like the air around him had finally stopped cooperating. And me, I stayed by that gate a little longer than I needed to, because after the kind of morning I'd had, watching karma clock in for a full shift felt pretty damn satisfying. So let me ask you something. When somebody crosses a line that clearly, do you still owe them the high road? Or does justice sometimes need teeth before peace can mean anything at all? If a neighbor tried to steal part of your property, would you fight it through the law? Confront them face to face, or outsmart them and make the lesson unforgettable? And if you've ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor, an HOA tyrant, or somebody drunk on a little local power, tell me your story. Where do you draw the line between justice and revenge?